Hello and welcome to Hare in the Hawthorn. Come to you on a very, very special location, somewhere very different, but it's not what I want to talk about. I'm actually recording this at the Skirrid Inn in Wales, and I've got a little bit of time free in between doing some research. And I wanted to address some questions that I've been asked and some questions that have been bubbling up on the internet following my appearance on Help My House is Haunted. So, Help My House is Haunted is a UK paranormal show, ghost hunting show, where Jane, Barry, and Ian go into a property, just a normal domestic property, people's houses, investigate their hauntings, and then proceed to help them out with that situation. I was asked probably about 9 years ago, maybe less than that, maybe 8 years ago, to go onto the program. And I did my contributory part to that through what you would probably understand as remote viewing. And I want to talk a little bit about what remote viewing is and how it works, how I found out I could do it, and how I use it, basically. So, this episode, although I was on the program as a psychic artist, I did a few weeks beforehand do some remote viewing on the property that I went to. So, for those of you who haven't seen it, it's series 6, episode 10, Pennies from Heaven. And it was a beautiful Victorian, large Victorian terrace property in Goole, which is near Hull. And when I spoke to Barry Guy, so Barry Guy is a good friend of mine, and he phoned me and said, "Do you want to be involved in this? I think it would be interesting for you." And I asked him not to tell me any of the information. He has the information beforehand, and so does Jane, but I know Ian doesn't. So he never tells me any of the information. I sometimes ask for a photograph of the front door just to give me an entry point. Unfortunately, because of timing, that wasn't able to happen. So I went into a semi-meditative state to do the remote viewing on the property and entered into the property and was psychically stuck, if you like, in the hallway and the stairwell. What you actually see on telly is a very, very small snippet of the work that I put in to that particular episode. And I totally understand why. I understand because of timing and because of the flow of the particular program. They can't put everything in. I mean, there's hours and hours of footage. And the work that I had done was quite comprehensive. And the images that you saw that I had put together for the program were only snippets of the images that I had received. So on remote viewing, I had seen archways. So, I mean, this blew my mind. It always blows my mind with remote viewing. I'd seen archways in the front door and two more archways in the hallway, which were very significant. There was a very strong sense within that part of the house. I also saw that the walls were kind of oozing black tar type material, kind of oily material. I've come across this before with remote viewing in other haunted properties. And this suggests to me that the property itself is psychically sick, that there is something wrong with the property, that over time has just got worse and worse and worse, and the house feels sick. Now, the way I explain that part of it, there is science behind sick house syndrome, but usually links to things like electronics or pylons and that kind of paraphernalia around a building, imbuing within the building. On a psychic sickness level, it can come from those things. It can come from externals. It can even come from the land itself prior to the building being there. But what this means is, on a psychic level, that the house has had trauma, or it's had some kind of energetic investment on a negative level. And what I was getting from this black stuff that was coming down the walls was that somebody had unknowingly cursed that part of the property, is the easiest way that I can put it. Somebody did not want people in their house. There was somebody who lived there who put a stop to guests arriving in that property. And I felt that very much straight away, that you don't come in here, you're not welcome. This is not a warm house. This is not a house that you want to be in. And it very much came across that it was a strong male presence that had created this environment to keep people away. Like beyond antisocial, absolutely beyond antisocial. Got to later in his life and hated people. So that was the first thing that I saw in the remote viewing. I then came across these beings, and I'm smiling because I quite like them. I've got no aversion to them, but they can be mischievous to malevolent. And Ian on the programme nicknamed them the fuzzies. So these are small energetic beings. I'm not quite sure where they lay in the land of ethereal beings, and I will chat about that. They are small. They're like energetic, psychic, dark dust balls. So they tend to show themselves as kind of this mass, this whirling mass of kind of chaotic energy, usually in a ball shape. They can morph, they can grow. They tend to only grow to about three and a half feet tall. So oftentimes they will present, and people will think that it's a child, and as a black swirling mass. And they can make themselves very, very small. So they can get very, very small, that they can fit under sofas and that kind of thing. And they show me themselves with these really big disc eyes that are of violet. They are purple violet. That didn't come across on the show very well. The colour looked red, more red. So they looked more evil, I think, than they should have done. And a lot of the time when I get these psychic messages, psychic images, colours and shapes are to be interpreted. So oftentimes these things will show themselves in a way that I can understand their nature and their being. So I take it that these purple eyes are connected to some psychic ability or energy, some of their connection to the psychic realm. And working with these beings in the past, I have gained an understanding that they will go to properties that are haunted, but they will also be very attracted to people in the property who have chaotic psychic energy. So when people have psychic energy that they don't understand how to tame, so it's usually a very, very strong, very natural ability that these people have, and they either suppress it or they don't know how to handle it. And they're often people who have experiences all their lives. These things turn up. They love that chaos. They love the crackling. Often that goes hand in hand with spirits of the dead. So spirits of the dead are in property as well as somebody with chaotic psychic energy. These little fuzzies, they run amok. So psychic walkthrough, I'm in that first part of the building in the hallway, and there are at least 3 of these beings, which denotes to me that there are more. So often in remote viewing, if I see more than 3, or three beings of a certain kind. It's telling me that there are more. Going on from that, I could not get past the stairwell. I was totally blocked. So I had to change tact and come out of from remote viewing of the building to see if I could tap into, I suppose, on a mediumship level, tap into the dead and also tap into the living that were there. The next image that I got was of a living male who was definitely psychically charged. He had this amazing aura around him that was just like fireworks going off in all different colours. But he also had this kind of scratchy, dark, pulsing energy coming from him, which denoted the chaotic nature. I'll just let that one go by. But he presented in a shadow with this energy around him. He wouldn't show me his face at that point. The next image that I got was an image that was a future image. So it was me sat in a room upstairs in the building, doing my drawings for the program. And a woman came in and stood behind me, watching what I was doing. Now, she did actually do that on the show. She was actually there, and I felt her presence strongly. Now, this is where things sound a little crazy, and I think this is why the image of this woman that I drew didn't make it to help my house is haunted, because it's kind of a step too far, I think, for a lot of people. So I was talking about how spirit energies will show themselves symbolically to help me understand their nature. This woman was very tall, very slender, and was in a very highly starched white dress. And her face, when she first showed it me, she was not happy about showing me, depicting her face to me. So she showed me, and her eye sockets there was nothing there. It was completely sunken into blackness, and she was very gaunt. And I kept pushing it because I didn't know why she was presenting without eyes. I did think, are you blind? Why are you showing me yourself without eyes? And I pushed it for her to present herself in a way that I could recognize or understand. And the strangest thing, she overlaid a cat's face onto her face. So it was, this part of her face was very cat-like, very almond eyes, tiny little nose and lips. And I tried with this spirit to ask her, why are you showing me yourself as a cat? Well, I never got to the end of that. Never got to the bottom of it. And didn't get to the bottom of it. She wouldn't communicate with me while I was in the property. Fast forward a little bit, and I came across another gentleman, quite a handsome gentleman, and it turned out that he was the owner of the building that we see being talked about within Help. He was very happy and a strong character when he was younger. He was very comfortable with himself. He was quite a dashing looking man, and he had enough wealth and confidence. And he had no problem in showing me the image of himself when he was of that age. It wasn't until I was actually on location that I had a different connection with that same gentleman. When I was there, I was really bothering him to have some kind of connection, communication with him, and he was not in a good place. He was very grumpy that there were people there. He hated having people there. He didn't like the crew being there. He didn't like the family being there. He just wanted to be left alone, and how dare they? That's the impression he was giving me. And he briefly, very briefly, gave me an image of himself as he is in spirit. And the image that I got, I'd sketched, it was in half darkness. It was in half darkness, and it was so quick. I had to get this image down. And he was so drawn and sallow, and his eyes were really sunken, and he felt very frail. And the one thing that he was most annoyed about presenting to me was the fact that he'd lost a lot of his hair. He was very, very proud of this luscious hair that he had had when he was younger. And he lost it on point of death, and he had retained that image of himself into the afterlife or wherever he was stuck. He was so disgruntled. Going back from the property back to a few weeks before doing the remote viewing, I eventually picked up on a male, and I couldn't figure whether it was the spirit of the living or the spirit of the dead, but there was no communication. There was just an image. So I drew this chap that I'd seen. And as I was doing the sketches for the episode, I was sending them to Barry as they were coming out, just so I could park it with him and say, this is the date that this remote viewing, this part of the remote viewing has occurred, and this is what I've picked up from it. And I literally put this image of this man right at the very end, because I was like, I don't understand. I can't pick anything up. And I sent it to him, and I said, I've got this guy as well. And he was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. When I turned up on location, I met the occupants of the property, and the picture that I had drawn of the gentleman that I couldn't get a fix on was the owner of the property, and he was living, he was alive. So the strength of his psychic energy had not only given me the symbolism of his chaotic psychic energy, but also had given me a very clear picture of who he was physically. Now, I'm saying all this, I still get so excited. I mean, psychic remote viewing is something that I've only really had a belief in myself about for about 5 years, and it still blows me away. I still get excited. I feel like I'm a vessel. I don't believe it's me that's doing it. I believe that I'm a vessel for this, and I get so excited about the process of how it works. How does it work? On location, I just want to talk to you a little bit about on location. I'll come back to the fuzzies, and I'll also come back to techniques of how to do remote viewing. So on location, I turned up way too early because that's my nature. And as the crew were filming, I was sat in the dining room, and as they started doing their first lot of filming with the couple who owns the property, the lovely couple, I jotted it down. I saw one of these fuzzies as a black kind of mass come around the side of the door and whiz under the sideboard. And I wrote that down. It was as they were doing EVP sessions, so that was really interesting. Later on, when it came to the point where they wanted me to sit in a room and do my sketching, so it looked like I was doing a lot of the work on set, but actually I'd done a huge amount of work through the remote viewing. I was in a small room at the front of the property. It'd been used as an office, and of course I sensed that lady behind me, and Ian had also picked up on it. Interestingly, the property owner, he had also seen her. And there had been a whole commotion go on out in the corridor. I could hear Barry yelling, Jane squealing, and Ian, remarking about the situation. And then it all went very quiet. I'd kind of caught a part of they'd seen something. And the next thing I know is I hear somebody say, "Is Kate okay? She's in that room on her own." And it was such a surreal moment. I was sketching what they were encountering. I was sketching these beings that they were encountering in real time out in the corridor. So they come busting in with a camera and said, "Are you all right?" And I'm in fits of nervous giggles. It was just such a surreal moment. So that was quite exciting. So we had a break, went downstairs, and they wanted me to do a walking shot upstairs and going back into the room. So I went up on my own. The crew and the team were downstairs in two of the rooms. And as I'm walking up the first flight of stairs, it's kind of on split levels. I was probably about 2 or 3 steps from the top, and I heard a tink noise. Now, this property, the biggest part of the phenomena is the apportation of coins. And I looked down, and there is this very large coin on the top of the stairs. And I think I swore and said, "Are you shitting me?" I think that was my response. Excuse that, but that was my response. So I'm staring at it, didn't want to pick it up. And I shouted Barry and said, "Barry, has anybody left a coin on top of the stairs, on your walk around?" And he came up and verified that it hadn't. And he was really excited because it's quite an old coin. I think it was an Edwardian coin, which was the oldest throughout the night that they'd found. And he was excited and he was taking photos of it and he was telling me a bit about it. And as we stood there sort of chatting about, why coins, poltergeist activity, apportation of objects fascinates me. It's one of my subjects that I absolutely adore. As we're chatting about this and the theories behind why this happens, something tugs the back of my jacket really hard, like one big yank. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I am not staying up here on my own. I will come up with the rest of the crew. I paranormal investigator I am, doesn't make me completely devoid of fear. And that shocked me. It really shocked me, that physical interaction. So I waited for the rest of the crew to come upstairs, and I went upstairs and finished off my drawings. I then took those drawings down and did a piece with the team, talked them through all the drawings. I think, if I remember rightly, there was 5 or 6 in all. And unfortunately for me, you saw the crappiest one that I did, which was I'm not very proud of it, but the sketch that I did of the gentleman on point of death. But the others you didn't see. The information was all relayed back though to the family. Again, that wasn't all on didn't all make it through the cut. So yes, that was my experience. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I've known Barry for years. I've met Jane on a few occasions. She's an absolute sweetheart. And it was the first time that I'd met Ian, and Ian's fantastic. And one thing I do want to say about this is I wouldn't get involved. I wouldn't be involved in anything that I didn't believe in the authenticity of. And I know Barry is no different on screen than he is off screen. How he investigates, how he is, his personality is exactly the same on Help My House is Haunted as he is with me in a pub. He's exactly the same. And they go in there investigating as investigators. They don't go in there as hosts, they don't go in there as TV personalities. And that's one of the things that I really, really like about Help My House is Haunted. And I felt very much part of the team, very much part of all of it. So this has thrown up some questions about remote viewing online. And I think it's because it's resurfaced again the very first episode of Help My House is Haunted, where I did remote viewing only, and I remote viewed a property in Devon and came across a pixie, which has led to investigating fairies in haunted locations, hence at the minute being at the Skirrid Inn. So what is remote viewing? It's a term that I'm not quite comfortable with. I've started actually using the word or the words remote observation as opposed to remote viewing. I think for me, remote viewing has that connotation of military, of military complex, which I don't sit well with. Sort of men who stare at goats type of thing. So remote observation, I don't know how it came about that I could do it. I do believe we can all do it. I do believe that some people find it easier to tap into that than others. So I'm not a natural medium. I find it very, very difficult to communicate with the spirits of the dead on a psychic level, on a clairvoyant level. However, viewing energies in a property and viewing beings that aren't spirits of the dead and the information that they give me, I find very easy. I can just go into it. And it's not even a real big deal. I don't sit down with candles. I don't ritualize it. I don't make a big deal about it. I tend to just go into a snoozy mode. So I'd be sat in a chair like this behind me, just relax my eyes. I would take a pinpoint of information that I've been given, often a front door. So if I'm given a front door of a property, is a really good way for me to get into a property and start looking around. And it's just, I let those images come and they are clear. I'm in a very rural area. I think that's attractive. So these images are very clear. Like, probably clearer than I could if I was conjuring these images up myself. So if somebody was to say, imagine an apple, I could imagine an apple and I could turn it round and I could taste it and I could smell it. But that would take some work to get to that point in my mind's eye. Excuse me. With remote viewing, I can just go there. And I will walk into a property and I don't have any anticipation or expectation of what I'm going to uncover there, but it just comes to me. And one of the frustrating things right at the very beginning for me of doing this was I trained to be a medium, but was crap. I do say that I'm a crap medium. And when I was training to be a medium, I didn't understand the symbolism or encourage symbolism to come forward to give me the answers that I needed. And it wasn't until that first Help My House is Haunted that I started cottoning on to this. So with that remote viewing, when I came across this pixie being that was very mad, he couldn't talk to me in English, and that's interesting why. But he was giving me an image of an orchard that I knew from childhood and showing me trees being cut down in that orchard. So he had given me an image of something that I already understood to be able to tell his story. Now, interestingly, as a snippet, he couldn't speak to me in English, and I thought, oh, maybe he's talking in pixie language. It later transpired, again, it didn't make it to the show, but it later transpired that they picked up this pixie from France. He was speaking to me in French. And of course, my French is non-existent. GCSE French, didn't really turn up to many lessons of that. But that's another story. The pissed off pixie of Devon's another story because it's a beautiful one. So it's not a major deal. And I feel very blessed that it's not a major deal. And I do get some really, really good responses, like with these fuzzies. So the first time I came across these particular energetic beings, and I'll talk you very quickly through them because it's something that I want to explore a bit more with Neil. These beings, I don't know where they fit in the etherical pantheon. Does that make sense? So the way that I perceive them are kind of in the fairy realm. They're kind of in that realm, but they don't feel as intelligent or intelligent on a human level, where the fairies have definitely got those kind of levels of very human traits and understanding. These feel like animals. These feel like the pets of fairies. These feel like the kind of egregores that witches would have. So that's something that I definitely want to explore, is where they fit in the pantheon of things. Are they of the Fey realm? Are they egregorial? So are they manifested through uh, human nature? Are they things that are sent egregorially via witchcraft to people? Are they something else? Are they part of an alien being? I really don't know. Definitely something that I want to explore further. I think it's a good time to actually stop this video and thank you all for watching. They're just loading some barrels downstairs in the skirrid. So I'm here just to let you know, doing some filming for Fae Folk. And there is a connection with this very haunted building with quite a dark, mischievous fairy. So keep your eye out for updates on that. Me and Neil will be chatting about it. I'm going to get Jo Hickey Hall, I think, as well, to have a talk about her part in that filming. But while the barrels are rolling outside, I'll say thank you very much, and I'll speak to you all very soon.